Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a fascinating and, frankly, pretty horrifying journey into, well, human conflict, distraction, and maybe the magnificent power of really old vocabulary.
Yeah. The source material today is,
Yeah.
it's uniquely sensational, isn't it? We've got the complete verbatim transcript of this absolutely vicious argument.
All right, high-stakes stuff between two, iconic soap opera actresses, Corky McGobbler and Lanky Jeebers. This is from the set of The Day After Yesterday, legendary show.
And this transcript, it's not just like celebrity gossip. It's almost a masterclass in rhetorical deflection.
Yeah.
What looks like it starts as a simple, almost funny debate. Cake versus pie, right? It just morphs into this astonishing display of linguistic warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you didn't know the context, you'd think these were, I don't know, rival academics or something. The words they pull out.
Absolutely. The surface conflict seems to be pure culinary existentialism, fluffy layers versus flaky crust. But we're here today to actually treat this, well, ridiculous exchange with the seriousness it weirdly deserves, because the insults themselves are the subject. They're this magnificent smokescreen for the real, simpler rot underneath.
And to unpack that rot, we're leaning pretty heavily on a subsequent expose from Trandy Glabbers, chief correspondent of The Dippy Scoop.
Right, The Scoop.
Now, okay, The Dippy Scoop tracks backstage drama, gossip, sure. But Glaber's reporting is, well, it's known to be notoriously reliable when it comes to the emotional stuff, the machinations behind the scenes in entertainment.
Yeah, Glabbers has a track record there.
And Trandy Glabbers confirms what just the sheer vehemence of the fight suggests. This was absolutely not about baked goods. It's about power dynamics, professional jealousy, deep-seated rivalry, and, as the report puts it, a malodorous truth involving betrayal.
So our mission today is really to analyze how human beings, maybe when faced with simple, painful conflict, will often build this elaborate intellectual fortress, a fortress of jargon, really, to hide the core wound.
Yeah.
We're going to move through those initial kind of philosophical insults, then survive the really shocking medical and physiological critiques.
Oh, yeah, that part's rough.
Then witness the actual physical brawl, and finally unveil the simple, tawdry catalyst that made these two women hate each other quite so spectacularly.
So prepare yourself, listener.
Yeah.
This is definitely not a polite disagreement over tea. This is Corky and Lanky basically weaponizing the dictionary.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the desserts. And Lanky's just stunningly aggressive preference for pie. Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, 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 quack chat, quack like a duck with Quack Chat. Quack, 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 quack. Okay, so the fuse gets lit by this almost impossibly benign gesture, right? Corky, maybe she's trying to keep the peace, or maybe she just wants a snack, who knows?
Right.
She offers a piece of dessert, asks Lanky the simple question, do you want some cake?
And Lanky's rejection is immediate and catastrophic. It's not just a no. The transcript actually records it as an unprecedented 309-word insult barrage.
309 words, before Corky can even, put the plate down.
Exactly. It's a tidal wave of verbal scorn.
Yeah.
It feels like a preemptive strike, designed to assert total intellectual, even moral superiority over a food item.
Wow. So Lanky immediately goes for the character flaw angle. She tells Corky, and I'm quoting here, "My entire disposition becomes lugubrious when contemplating your spongy preference."
Lugubrious?
Yeah, she finds the preference odious.
Let's just pause on lugubrious. It means looking or sounding sad and dismal, often, exaggeratedly so. Lanky isn't just saying she dislikes cake. She's saying the thought of cake makes her dramatically fundamentally depressed. She's elevating her opinion to a whole state of being, right away trying to put Corky on the defensive.
And then she attacks the cake itself, the structure, calling it a specious promise of sweetness, all fluff and lies.
All fluff from lines.
So the cake is morally corrupt now, and this is where she starts dropping these incredible, character assassinations disguised as vocabulary lessons.
Yeah, she starts linking Corky's personal flaws to the cake. Lanky calls Corky a quidnunc.
A quidnunc? What is that?
It's a fantastic, mostly forgotten term for someone who's gossipy. A rumor monger.
Ah.
So Corky isn't just offering cake. She's spreading rumors about the batter's supposed quality. Lanky's implying Corky's taste is based on bad, shallow information.
Okay. Then she keeps going, labels Corky a dandy prat.
Meaning an unworthy or trifling champion of a silly cause.
Right, and a flibberty gibbet because of her pantry obsession. But the real surgical strike comes next, doesn't it?
It does. The insults pivot from just character flaws to, intellectual deficiency. Lanky calls Corky a gongoozler.
A gongoozler sounds odd.
It means someone who stares blankly or idly at something fascinating or deep. So by calling Corky this, Lanky is suggesting Corky just lacks the capacity to appreciate true culinary depth.
Which is pie, obviously.
Obviously, cake is just easy, bright colors to a gongoozler.
And my favorite from Lanky in this opening salvo is when she calls Corky a doxy. Now, that term has some pretty archaic negative baggage.
Right, it does.
But Lanky explains it as, Corky is betraying true quality for cheap thrills. She's not just saying Corky's immoral generally, she's saying Corky has sold out her culinary soul for the cheap, quick hit of cake.
Oh.
Lanky sums up cake as jejune, so childish, and Corky is vainglorious for being proud of something so basic.
This is just perfect rhetorical camouflage, isn't it? Why use lugubrious instead of just sad? Why doxy instead of cheap?
Yeah, why?
Because using these, highfalutin terms elevates the insult. It makes the speaker Lanky sound entirely rational, almost academic, even when she's talking about, a layer cake. She's building this linguistic shield to hide the, frankly, irrational anger she clearly feels.
So Corky, having been just verbally fillet, obviously can't back down. She counterattacks. First, she dismisses Lanky's whole speech as garrulous and verbose nonsense.
Just talky hot air.
Right, and then she shifts the focus to pie, saying it lacks vitality.
Corky basically defines pie as fundamental pathetic. She says it's a dull, insipid thing, and its filling is so maudlin, like a weeping tragedy that never ends.
So pie has no joy, no flair. It just wallows in its own depressing structure.
Exactly. And she suggests Lanky's methods are shady too, claiming the pie assembly is done in hugger-mugger secrecy.
Hugger-mugger.
Yeah, like secretively, suspiciously. And this results in a kakistocracy of crumbly textures.
Kakistocracy. That's a political term, isn't it? Rule by the worst.
Precisely. Corky is mirroring Lanky's tactic,
Sure.
using an obscure political term to critique a dessert. It's brilliant in a terrifying way.
And then Corky unleashes her own barrage of character attacks.
Yeah.
Lanky is a bumptious fellow.
Arrogant and a churl.
Rude, mean-spirited, yeah. But Corky really zeroes in with some highly descriptive ones. Lanky is a scobberlotcher.
Which means basically a sloppy conversationalist who just wastes time.
Right, and her pro-pie stance is a lickspittle devotion to cheap sugar. But my favorite, and this really shows they must have, researched this stuff, is Quackerwatcher.
Quackerwatcher, that's amazing. It's a reference to a wooden puppet, right? Often political puppets that dance when you pull the strings.
Exactly. Corky calls Lanky a Quackerwatcher who dances to the tune of cheap sugar. Implying Lanky isn't authentic, she's just a mechanism responding to simple, sugary inputs.
She's not real. She's just a puppet for pie.
And furthermore, Lanky is a cumberworld.
Cumberworld.
Yeah, someone who exists only to, weigh down the conversation, weigh down the earth itself with your tedious pie preferences.
Good grief.
And finally, all pie defenders are Zounderkites, which sounds magnificent, but basically just means clueless or stupid. Way better than just calling someone an idiot, though.
They're trading these incredibly obscure insults like verbal cannonballs.
Huh.
It makes anyone listening or reading the transcript feel like they're witnessing this highly specialized intellectual duel.
But Lanky refuses to give ground on the cake structure critique. She comes back, calling Corky an impudent little woman with a tendentious bias toward anything layered and moist.
Tendentious bias. Okay.
And she sees cake complexity as just chaos. Lanky argues Corky's fancy cakes are just a gallimaufry.
A confused jumble, a hodgepodge of clashing flavors.
Right. And she suggests Corky doesn't actually argue, she just jargoggles the issue with endless confusing jargon, deliberately muddying the facts.
So now she's critiquing Corky's whole rhetorical style, suggesting she uses paronomasia-like, playing on words with similar sounds, to mask a basic lack of substance. She calls Corky a rhodomontade, which is a braggart, basically.
Right.
And a fopdoodle for thinking a fluted cake edge is somehow a sign of high culture.
A fopdoodle! These words are incredible, but the ultimate intellectual putdown, I think, the final one Lanky delivers in this round, is calling Corky an ultra-crepidarian.
Ultra-crepidarian. Okay, unpack that one.
It means someone who gives opinions on subjects far beyond their actual knowledge or shallow depth.
Ouch. So, stay in your lane, cake lover.
Pretty much. Lanky concludes that pie isn't just food, it's the canoodle of culinary mediocrity. Canoodle!
The sheer work that goes into this level of linguistic offense is something else. They didn't just, pull these words out of thin air. They chose them specifically to inflict damage that resonates not just emotionally, but intellectually.
Right. They're trying to position their petty hatred as this high-minded debate between two incredibly learned people.
Exactly. So when you've exhausted all the philosophical and structural critiques, and the anger is still just boiling, where do you go next?
Well, you move from the abstract idea of dessert to the sickening, visceral reality of its alleged filth. Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack. Quack, 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 quack chat, quack like a duck with quack chat. Quack, quack, quack.
Yeah, this transition it's genuinely terrifying because it signals they've moved way past simply disliking the dessert. They're now condemning it as a source of disease, a biohazard, maybe even like mass extinction.
Right, it's not debating food anymore. They're debating public safety. It's insane.
This is the pathological phase. The sensory repulsion just takes over. Corky launches into her assessment of pie, arguing it's utterly putrescent.
Rotting.
Right, rotting. A malodorous disk that fills the room with a fetid cloud. She's trying to make the very existence of pie an offense to your nose.
And she ramps up the horror. Corky claims the pie has a pestilential aroma.
Pestilential, like relating to or causing infectious disease, often refers to the plague.
So Lanky's pie is basically the Black Death in a crust.
That's the implication. She says the smell is like stale air from a charnel house.
A charnel house where they kept bones.
Yeah. The underlying message is, Lanky's beloved pie is literally made of death and decay. She even suspects the filling is excrementitious pulp.
Excrementitious pulp. We started arguing about what moisture content, and now we're here.
It just shows how desperate they are to inflict maximum visceral disgust.
So Lanky obviously has to counter with equal ferocity. She goes after the cake's scent, calls it a saccharine disgrace with a mephitic smell.
Mephitic, that's a truly delightful word, isn't it? It references the foul, noxious odor of like swamp gas or deadly vapor.
Sure.
She claims a sponge is vuggy full of uneven holes, suggesting decay, and the whole structure is unnervingly cadaverous, as if it died days ago.
So where cake is supposed to be joyous, celebratory, Lanky sees decomposition. She argues the taste is profoundly bilious, a miasmatic shock that turns your saliva sour.
Miasmatic, like a poisonous atmosphere.
And the icing isn't sweet, it's a musty coating. This whole thing is like a culinary experience described entirely using forensic horror language.
And because just sensory disgust isn't enough, they move into specific chemical and sourcing attacks. Now they're attacking the very origin of the food, suggesting the ingredients themselves are toxic.
Corky goes after the pie components, claims the shortening must be Icarus rendered fat.
Icarus. That sounds bad.
It's a truly repulsive description. It implies the fat is watery, thin, mixed with decay, like the runoff from a rendering plant or a slaughterhouse. She states the sugar is likely arsenic, and the fruit is certainly botulistic, sourced from leavings scraped off a compost heap. The whole process, Corky declares, is cynical and sordid.
Lanky delivers a pretty much reciprocal attack on the cake's industrial nature. She claims the process is pure industrial filth. The sponge texture is mucilaginous.
Like mucus.
Yeah, or something extruded artificially. The flour is brassy, having developed a rusty taint from sitting in some damp, insalubrious corner.
And the most stomach-churning quote from Lanky here, I think, is her condemnation of the frosting. She calls it a pustular growth or leprous mass of artificiality.
Leprous mass.
Oh my.
And when Corky defends the cake's moisture, Lanky just rejects this completely. It's just serous fluid oozing out evidence of decay.
Serous fluid, like the thin, watery stuff that separates from blood, the fluid of like oozing rot.
Exactly. It's unbelievable.
At this point, the argument has totally left the kitchen. It's entered the realm of like high-stakes biological warfare, and they transition seamlessly from ingredient contamination to the horrifying physiological and psychological harm inflicted on anyone who eats this stuff.
Corky details the agonizing effects of eating Lanky's pie. The first bite is instantly emetic.
Causes vomiting. Internally, the result is dyspeptic turmoil, leading to explosive gaseous bloating.
Lovely.
But the truly specific and terrifying insults focus on systemic failure. Corky talks about a cloacal warmth in the gut.
Cloacal warmth. That sounds primal and bad.
Yeah, a repulsive internal heating leading to strangury and vertiginous despair.
Strangury? What is that?
It's a specific medical term for painful, difficult urination, often caused by kidney or bladder irritation. Corky is literally accusing the pie of attacking the victim's excretory system.
She went there. Wow.
And the poor consumer is left sallow and wan, a final victim of acute phossy jaw.
Phossy jaw. Now that rings a bell. It's a real thing, wasn't it? An industrial disease?
Exactly. Devastating. Caused by phosphorus poisoning, historically. Led to grotesque facial disfigurement, bone decay. Corky isn't just calling the pie poisonous, she's calling it a slow, agonizing death inflicted by an industrial horror.
Lanky, of course, has to match this medical horror show. She claims cake is actually a psychological weapon. The sweetness is torpid, immediately dulling the senses, causing a somnolent, foggy mind.
So cake makes you stupid.
Intellectually useless, yeah, due to the sugar crash.
And the disgusting physical side effects. Lankulus are also highly specific, generates a phlegmy, post-nasal drip.
Ugh, gross.
And a crushing headache. Lanky asserts the sweetness is actually necrosing.
Necrosing, like killing tissue.
Killing the taste buds entirely, turning the consumer into a sensory zombie.
Okay, this is beyond. The final effect is total collapse, clammy sweat, and absolute apathy. They've used the language of chemical contamination, epidemic disease, bodily trauma, to fully dehumanize the other person's choice of dessert.
The stakes are now. Your favorite dessert is actively trying to murder you via industrial disease and debilitating internal trauma.
Yeah. The intensity of this verbal artillery is it's unsustainable. They've exhausted the philosophical, the sensory, the chemical, the medical arguments. The structure of this linguistic defense mechanism is starting to just crumble.
So the only thing left to attack is
the other person.
Directly.
Today's Deep Dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, 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 quack chat, quack like a duck with Quack Chat. Quack, quack, quack. Right. This section marks the complete failure of that whole lexical defense. The anger is just too big. It can't be contained anymore, not even by the most obscure, magnificent vocabulary. They transition from critiquing baking structure to direct, crude attacks on physical appearance and demeanor.
Corky starts the final, most personal, and frankly most desperate barrage. It's focused entirely on Lanky's person. She's a grizzled old sot with leathery skin.
Ouch.
Corky notes that Lanky always looks lugubrious. There's that word again. Now applied directly to her face and emits a fusty odor, described as a stale smell like unwashed, slovenly linen.
So a devastating attack on sanitation and age. And the voice critique is equally harsh. Lanky's voice is strident and nasal, a cacophonous whine.
And Corky concludes that Lanky is always covered in fluff and dandruff, a walking hovel of a human. She's reduced Lanky to just total repulsive squalor.
Lanky, having abandoned all pretense of intellectual critique herself, resorts to pure body shaming, though, interestingly, still kind of wrapped in elevated language sometimes. She tells Corky, "You were built like a squat, chunky little barrel."
Charming.
Her clothes are dingy, and she smells unwashed with a sulfurous hint, like a rotten egg she keeps hidden somewhere.
A sulfurous hint, wow.
Lanky finds Corky's speech a shrill assault, a tittering sound that's terribly like twee and immature. And she concludes with this final brutal assessment. Corky is physically flabby, a pasty sight that is hopelessly unattractive, and her entire manner is clumsy and gawky.
So they're basically just fighting about who is dirtier, older, and uglier now. All the fancy words are gone.
Pretty much. The transcript shows Lanky delivering the last verbal blow. She calls Corky a tendentious idiot, which, compared to ultra-crepidarian, is almost simple.
Yeah, kind of anticlimactic linguistically, but it signals the end of the word war and the beginning of the kinetic response.
Trandy Glaber's report details the chaos that immediately followed. As that final, relatively simple adjective left Lanky's lips, Corky just erupted, launched herself forward with high-pitched shriek reminiscent of a kettle drum being violently ripped apart.
Good Lord, like a kettle drum.
That's the quote. She attacked Lanky with feline fury, claws out, aiming directly for the eyes.
Whoa, going for the eyes.
It's apparently. Lanky instantly retaliated by grabbing Corky by her unkempt hair and pulling her down.
And the irony here is just, it's delicious, isn't it? And messy.
Oh, completely. The two women who had just spent, an hour debating the sanitary, chemical, and philosophical purity of baked goods, using words like acreous and pestilential, they tumbled straight into a nearby table laden with prop pastries, rolling around in the very flour and sugar they just condemned as biohazards.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Glaber's describes the resulting struggle as a squalid and grotesque wrestling match. Apparently so intense, the crew couldn't physically pull them apart.
So what did they do?
The only solution was drastic. They were forced to hose the enraged women down with gallons of water to break the grip of their moribund struggle.
Hose them down. like with a fire hose.
That's what it sounds like. Think about that visual. Two major TV stars, drenched, covered in fake frosting and flour, being separated by a hose.
It perfectly illustrates how the verbal aggression just failed. All those complicated words led straight to the most basic, primal form of conflict, a wet, messy brawl.
Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, 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 quack like a duck with quack, 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 quack. So in the immediate aftermath, Corky and Lanky did what, well, celebrities often do best. They constructed a public narrative.
Damage control.
Exactly. They insisted the feud was strictly about artistic differences. And yes, a deep philosophical divide over baked goods. Lanky even hinted to some reporter that Corky lacked the intellectual rigor to understand the structural superiority of pie.
Of course she did. They absolutely needed that, right? To maintain some shred of dignity and maybe justify the sheer absurdity of the whole confrontation.
But Trainee Gladders cut right through the obfuscation. The Dippy Scoop expose confirms the malodorous truth wasn't about gluten structure or crust integrity at all.
Nope. It was about Fludrick Jallywalker,
the jejune lead actor.
Fludrick, who plays the unctuous, morally licentious tycoon on the show. Turns out he's just as oily and deceptive off-screen.
Shocker.
He's the simple, direct source of pain that these actresses spent hours, literally hours, covering up with this elaborate lexicon of disgust.
The level of deception here it's breathtaking, really. Glabbers confirms Fludrick had been simultaneously dating both Corky and Lanky.
Both of them. At the same time.
For the better part of a year. And he successfully managed to keep them in this state of perpetually jaundiced rivalry.
Jaundiced rivalry. Wow. Playing them off each other.
This is the core thesis of this whole deep dive, right? Glabbers concluded that the whole cake versus pie debate was merely the grot.
The grot.
Yeah, the ugly surface detail, the emotional and verbal debris, all covering a much deeper wound. The feeling of betrayal, the jealousy, the humiliation caused by Fludrick's continuous manipulation.
So all that incredible specialized language, the ultra-crepidarian, the Icarus rendered fat, the accusations of Fossey jaw, it was all just sophisticated verbal theater covering up the plain, simple fact that they were both victims of the same, two-timing actor.
It really reveals this extraordinary human compulsion, doesn't it, to intellectualize and externalize simple pain.
Totally. Because to actually acknowledge the betrayal would mean admitting vulnerability, and maybe worse, admitting that your rival, the person you despise,
Corky or Lanky,
was in the exact same painful position. That's just too humiliating for some people.
It's easier to spend time researching synonyms for stupid and rotten and project that internal feeling of rot onto, like, a dessert.
Yeah.
Than it is to look at your rival and say, hey, we've been jointly duped by this mountebank. Another great word they probably could have used.
Right. The dense vituperative language created this necessary distance from the emotional core of the trauma.
They took a simple, messy truth, Fludrick betrayed us, and wrapped it in the most ornate, repulsive linguistic armor imaginable, making the conflict sound glorious and intellectual, even as they were fundamentally just acting out of simple jealousy and really profound mutual suffering. Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, quack, quack chat. Quack like a duck with Quack Chat. Quack, quack, quack. Now, this brawl, as spectacular as it wasn't just an isolated incident fueled only by Fludrick.
No, Glabbers makes that clear. It was the crescendo of a long history of conflicts. Their rivalry was deep-seated. It predated Fludrick, rooted firmly in their professional relationship on set.
Their competitive dynamic was established years ago. Corky was apparently absolutely convinced Lanky always got the more bombastic storylines.
The juicy ones, the award bait.
Exactly. Corky would dismiss Lanky's acting using this sallow tone, calling her performance torpid, sluggish, and her overall presence nugatory.
Nugatory, meaning worthless.
Basically, yeah. This was just daily workplace friction simmering for years.
And Lanky, naturally, retaliated, attacked Corky's theatricality, called Corky a charlatan who relied on garish costumes to distract from her phlegmy on-screen delivery.
Phlegmy delivery, ouch!
So they used performance critique to justify their personal disdain, constantly undermining each other's professional worth.
And Glabbers details how their romantic lives were just as tangled even before Fludrick showed up. There was this period the source calls the casting couch crisis era.
Oh boy.
Where they were frequently dating the same producers, minor co-stars, leading to a series of putrid confrontations. This history just built a foundation of toxic mutual suspicion and competition.
So Fludrick walked into a minefield that was already laid.
Pretty much. And there's this infamous incident, pre-pie fight, that establishes their capacity for physical violence long before Fludrick. Corky, in a fit of vertiginous despair.
Vertiginous despair. That specialized term again. Overwhelming dizziness and misery.
Right. She physically threw a handful of gritty stage sand at Lanky.
Stage sand.
Here's his...
Yep. And the accusation back then, Corky called Lanky a pettifogger.
Pettifogger. Someone who quibbles over trivial stuff.
Exactly. Suggesting Lanky won roles not through talent, but through petty, manipulative arguments. So the cake versus pie argument was really just the latest, most elaborate version of this old, deep-seated conflict, but now amplified by the ultimate prize, Fludrick.
And Fludrick, according to Glabbers, wasn't just a passive bystander in all this existing tension. He was the master of skullduggery.
Master of skullduggery. Love it.
He actively exploited that history of distrust to manage his deception.
How so?
Well, he apparently convinced each woman that the other one was a mountebank, a fraud, whose affection for him was purely meretricious. Meretricious.
Yeah.
Like insincere. Flashy but worthless.
Exactly. Driven only by career opportunism. So he convinced Corky that Lanky was only dating him for better storylines, and he convinced Lanky that Corky was doing the same. He kept them focused on hating each other, not questioning him.
He used their existing professional jealousy as a psychological weapon. Probably fabricated stories about what the other woman said.
Oh, absolutely. Lanky said your cake preference proved you were intellectually shallow. Or Corky said your pies were literally full of Icarus rendered fat, ensuring all the anger was directed outward at each other.
The sheer pressure of this hidden crepuscular dynamic.
Crepuscular, like hidden, dark, twilighty.
Right. This dark world of lies and manipulation combined with the exhaustion of delivering, vituperative dialogue about desserts for hours, it finally pushed them into that heinous confrontation.
So the fight wasn't just about the betrayal itself. It was about years of stress, operating in Fludrick's manufactured environment of deceit. They were exhausted. They needed that final release.
And the cake and pie insults were the highly sophisticated final verbal artillery, because that level of ornate hatred felt justified by all those years of rivalry. They needed a spectacular intellectual framework to house their simple shared pain.
Trandy Glabbers offers a final, pretty sharp summary of their whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Concluding that the actress's relationship is utterly deleterious and deserves only oblivion.
Deleterious, harmful, and deserves oblivion. Wow. A spectacular ending to a spectacular and, well, spectacularly pointless war. Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, 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 chat. Quack like a duck with Quack Chat. Quack, quack, quack. #outro. So we journeyed from a simple, polite question about cake through, 309 words of astonishing linguistic genius?
Right.
Detailed assessments of Icarus rendered fat and phossy jaw, past a catastrophic water-hosed physical brawl, only to discover the root cause was, well, the jejune and unctuous actor, Fludrick Jallywhacker.
The synthesis seems utterly clear, doesn't it? The sheer complexity and the historical precision of the language they used, terms like ultracrepidarian and kakistocracy, it was inversely proportional to the simplicity of the truth. They used that specialized vocabulary like a linguistic shield, desperately trying to elevate their feud to some philosophical plane when it was really just simple jealousy and profound betrayal.
So the key takeaway for you, our listener, is pretty powerful, I think. Extreme, specialized language in almost any conflict often serves as a kind of rhetorical camouflage.
Yeah, it's verbal artillery, like you said, covering a simpler, more mundane wound that the participants just can't bring themselves to address directly, because that would require vulnerability.
The grot, that simple, ugly truth, is almost always less complicated than the glorious, complex arguments people use to defend it or hide it.
So if you ever encounter an argument that's just so dense, so convoluted, so aggressive, that it seems to defy common sense, whether it's online, in politics, maybe even in your workplace, it raises an important question. What's the simple, maybe tawdry catalyst beneath the surface? What is the Fludrick Jallywhacker they are refusing to acknowledge?
What other complex philosophical feuds might also just be a putrid mound of flour and sugar covering a much simpler, unresolved core conflict? What is your personal grot that maybe you're defending with overly complex, aggressive language?
That's the true taste of this deep dive, I think.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the magnificent and malodorous truth of Fludrick Jallywhacker. Today's deep dive sponsor is Quack Chat. Quack, crack, quack, quack, quack like a duck with Quack Chat. Quack, quack, quack.